Good afternoon. My, this is a rowdy group. There must be something in the water or the coffee today. I don't know which. Welcome to First Fridays at the Cedars. This has been a terrific opportunity to share between McPherson College faculty and staff and residents of the Cedars community and folks from the town of McPherson. I'm very much looking forward to this afternoon's presentation and conversation with Dr. Rick Tyler. Rick is a very special person. I was fortunate to be his colleague for 38 years. We did 19 years of musical theater together, probably team taught a fine arts appreciation course for about 20 years. And as you know, Rick is terribly shy. Something that was so much fun in the team teaching experience is to develop that level of trust where persons can say, if they're looking around the room and students aren't getting it, Rick would say to me, Steve.
Excuse me, Steve, Susan Taylor's not paying attention, so could you do that again?
Well done. You've got the idea, and vice versa, but it's really neat. So, outstanding teacher, fine performer, terrific with building relationships with students, taking a program and building it to new heights. So it's really fun to have Rick here this afternoon. I'm going to turn it over to Monica at this particular point, and I think she has some announcements for you.
I do. Thank you very much, Steve. And what a wonderful introduction to Rick, who is our speaker in just a moment. But before he takes the stage, I just want to share that Rick has prepared a little bit, some highlights and maybe some lowlights from his time over 40 years teaching at McPherson College. But a lot of this session is different than the lectures that you are accustomed to. Rick is anxious to answer your questions that you put to him. So I want you to take a moment right now and think of at least one good question that you can't wait to ask Rick about. And that could be about his courses, that could be about his interests, his future. I can't promise he will answer your question, but you can ask him whatever you would like. So we'll do that in just a moment. And I also want to say a thank you and an announcement for our yummy cupcakes. We thought we wanted to do something just a little more elevated to thank Rick for all of his time. And so these were made by Ann Kirshner, good friends with Rick and with many of you. So there's lemon poppy seed and there's red velvet. So enjoy the cookies, cupcakes, and other snacks. So with that, I will turn it over to Rick.
Thank you. I do have, whoa, there we go. Hi there. For those of you that came in, I printed off all the shows that have been done in the 41 years Rick Tyler's been here. And I don't know if there's enough of them back there, but there are more. So if anybody needs one of these, just wave your hand and we'll get some of them. Yeah. Guess how many shows Rick Tyler has been a part of at McPherson College? No, don't say it that way. How many shows have been done under Rick Tyler's era at McPherson College? Don't count them. It'll take you a while. 233. 233 plus 17 drama tour productions that went out to Iowa, Minnesota, whatever, or convocation presentations. And within that, then there are 22 one-act titles in that. So it came to a grand total of 250. So I know. 233. So don't know how many of you know the story of how Rick Tyler got the job. It's all Una Yoder's fault. When I was a senior in college, I was directing the musical Carnival, and Bob Burkholder came to take his daughter Susan out for her birthday, and I wouldn't let her out of rehearsal. And so they sat in the back row with Una, And Una got to talking. He said, if you ever need anybody to teach theater at Bueller High School, that's the kid you want. 4 weeks later, I got an invitation to apply for a job. And I was there for 2 years. I never really had, yeah. And then Carlene had been teaching, finished her degree while I was down there, and then taught for a year part-time. And then Una decided that her hearing was getting bad enough that she shouldn't be teaching public speaking or acting or doing plays anymore. So she told the college, why don't you get Rick and Carlene to go get their masters and come back and take my job? And we did, and they did, and that's how it all started. It was all Una's fault. But I owe her a lot of everything in my career because she was the one that started the theater major at McPherson College. And if that hadn't happened, who knows where I would be right now. And so we place all the blame on Una Yoder. Okay? So that's where it's at. So anyway, yeah. What I've done is I've kind of gone through and went back over the years and figured out, I put together things that I figured you might ask. But how old was Rick Tyler when he started teaching at McPherson College? 24. I was a little kid. And that was back in the day when the administration picked the people they wanted and then got them to get the degrees they needed. And now you have to come in with all those degrees behind you before you can even think about getting those jobs. And so it was a much different place, and thank goodness for that, because I wouldn't have been there. But yeah, probably the best thing that helped me getting started was doing summer theater. I remember one summer at Vassar Playhouse up by Topeka. In one summer I did 7 shows. And it was fun because it was dinner theater and it was all done in a barn and a railroad train cars around it. And the actors would do their show at 8 o'clock at night, finish about 10:30, start rehearsals for the next show around 11, and then I'd be asleep in the train car and they would come in 3 in the morning and say, Rick, the stage is empty now, you can have it. And I'd go in and paint from 3 in the morning till 10 while they were sleeping, and then they'd get up at 10 and start rehearsals again, and then I had to share the space with them. So, and I learned more in those couple summers of doing that than probably anything else. So, yeah. But, yeah, I've done 160 set designs for McPherson College and 102 costume designs, full shows, and a total of 206 set designs for other places, and a total of 107 costume designs. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I've got a file cabinet, vertical file cabinet full of 3 drawers full of nothing but set and costume designs that I've got to figure out what to do with in the next 2.5 weeks. So, and probably the most exciting thing that happened during my tenure is when Carlene and I met with Alan and Kathleen McNamee and got First Nighters going. And that has been the godsend to the theater program. That we used to, before children would go to the Y every night and swim. Well, not every night, but some nights we would do lap swims, but we ended up spending most of our time just talking. And I was trying to figure out how I could get more money to do theater, because my first year's budget was $900. And that had to pay for sets and royalties and costumes and all of that stuff, plus anything I might need for a class. And so I asked Alan, I said, so if I wanted to do theater and have something on the side, could that money come to me? No. I said, so you're telling me that if the home ec department, which we still had at that time, had a bake sale and they baked everything, could they keep their money? Yes. I said, what's the difference? He said, because it was a student organization, that was theirs. If it was department, that was already the college's, so it came back to the college. Light bulb came on. Alpha Psi Omega is a student organization. And so if everything was done under the auspices of Alpha Psi Omega, the money stayed in their account and we could use it for whatever. And so that's how it started. Thank you, Alan McNamee. And then Carlene and Kathleen started coming up with all kinds of recipes and what we could do in dinner theater, and it just kind of took off. And that membership has gone from its low, with the first year was 35 members. And back in about 10 years ago, we were up to 270 members. And that got to be too much. So we kind of purposely cut that back a bit and have gone from there. So yeah. So that's kind of the story. Highlights for me were the kids, not the college kids, my own kids. That Emily stayed in my office spring semester of her first year of life in the afternoons. Her first steps were in the basement of the student union. And she was later in a couple shows in middle school. Never in college. She always played in the orchestra for musicals. And then when Alex came along, he was a theater major, and we did a lot together. But I think the most fun I ever had with him was when he was teaching at the high school. And he was my boss. And I did a number of shows, design shows and costumes for him. So yeah. What questions do you have? I can ramble and do all kinds of things, but what do you want? Yes, Miss Stanley.
What's the disaster that you most like to remember?
The disaster that I most like to remember is a glass bowl in Carlene's hand, and she was dipping French onion soup into that glass bowl, and the bowl shattered and went into the big pot of soup. And we had been through maybe a third to half of first nighters, and the kids all, what do we do? I said, well, it's pretty obvious. We're not going to serve it. Well, what are you going to do? I said, we're going to go out and tell them the truth. So I went on and said, those of you who don't have soup, I have a special problem for you. You can have it if you want glass in it, or not. And nobody took me up on that. So yeah, that was probably the biggest disaster.
Tell them about the ice cream.
Oh, when we did Midsummer Night's Dream a la 8th century Japan, we had a student from Japan that designed the sets and costumes, and also then taught the students how to make a Japanese meal that we served. And this was at the time when students were in charge of one aspect of the meal. And so we had a student that was in charge of the dessert, and it was green tea ice cream. Yes. And he got very confused about the difference between cornstarch and corn syrup. We had a very, very wet ice cream. Yeah. Yeah. Crest toothpaste. Yep. Oh, what else? Yes.
How do you pick the plays that you do?
Oh, I hate that question. First thing we always do was find out who our senior majors are. And during their junior year, junior seminar, we talk about projects. What area of concentration do you have? Is it design? Is it acting? Is it whatever? And work with them on picking what that area is, and then try to give them a list of shows that we think might fit their abilities. And then those are picked first, and depending on what their other schedule's like, we pick the semester those are in. Because if they're student teaching, which could be their senior project, but some kids always want to do more, that we try not to do it while they're student teaching, and then work the other shows around from that. And so I always had a list of shows I've always wanted to do, and about 10 years ago I threw that list in the trash because they were all so old, and I was not excited about them anymore, and haven't done most of them, but that's okay. So yeah.
Are all the costumes made there on campus, or what?
Most of the costumes are made on campus. We've rented costumes a very few times. When we did Anti-Mame, we rented all the red riding habits. When we did the version of Musing Man, where we started in black and white and gray and went to full color, we rented the quartets, black and white and gray stuff, and then their other stuff, because we just didn't have enough men's colored suits of that time period. And so we rented those. We've rented individual costume pieces over the years, But most of the stuff we have made or we've pulled from our supply of things hanging in the basement of Brown, and pulled from students' own closets. And a lot of times they have that. And every once in a while we'll go to Save and Share or whatever. Sometimes I've actually taken students to Wichita and I bought them suits because they don't have suits that fit them. And so we've taken them down and we've bought them. Steve Mulch down at Guys and Gals was excellent about giving me things at cost for kids and giving us a discount on things. So yeah. Yeah, Rebecca.
I remember asking you once if your mother taught you how to sew, and you told me no, it was a student at Bueller High School that knew how to sew and taught you how to sew.
Yes. My job at Bueller, I followed Roger Moon, and Roger Moon and I have done a lot of theater together since then, but his mother-in-law was an excellent costumer, and his shows look gorgeous. I saw a couple of them when I was student teaching in Hutch, and I thought, oh, so I got the job and I thought, well, who's going to make the costumes? Betty is gone. She went to Winfield, Kansas with Roger and Allison. And so I had two young women in my public speaking class at Bueller, and I knew they were in the home ec department. And so one night after school I said, do you think you guys could teach me to sew? And they said, why? And I said, well, we're doing the matchmaker and I've got to make costumes. Oh. Okay. And so they took me down to the home ec lab, and we sat in front of a sewing machine, and they started pulling out patterns, and I said, but most of what I want is long period skirts. If I know the waist and how tall their waist is off the floor, what do I need a pattern for? And they said, what? And I said, well, it's just a series of, I didn't know they were called gores at the time, but I do now. That gores of a skirt, and you can put those together in a certain way, and you can make that, and you hem it, and they, oh. Yeah, I think you could probably do that. So that's where it started, because before that, Carlene sewed. She made all kinds of clothes. But, yeah, she wasn't teaching theater at Bueller High School. And so that's how it started. And since then, I was very good about, I don't like to read books that tell me how to do things. I look at the pictures and figure it out. And the first summer after we were at McPherson, Carly and I took off to Europe for the summer, and in Bath, England, in a bookstore, was a book where they had taken museum pieces from the Royal Albert and Victoria Museum, pulled them all apart, showed you how they were put together, and it was all done in scale. And I thought, And so we've made a couple of those. They don't look like theirs. But yeah, so then I started doing that kind of thing and looking and saying, so how do you get a skirt to do this, and how do you get a man's suit to hang like that? And by looking at the pictures and how they were cut, and what was cut on the grain of the fabric, and what was cut on the bias of the fabric, and all those kind of things, just started doing that. And then Rachel Pannebecker, if you remember Rachel and John, when Rachel was here, she did a lot with period costumes for the museums. And she did a workshop and showed me how you can take darts out of a woman's dress and move it and then hide it under trim so it looks like it's a period piece, but it really isn't. She taught me all kinds of little tricks like that, how you can move things around, and as long as the fabric is taken out somewhere, it'll work. And I thought, wow. So a lot of my knowledge was just, kind of trying it, and there were some real ugly costumes at the beginning too, I must say. That's one area that we've gotten much better at. So, yeah.
Are there a couple present productions that stand out to you as being the ones you enjoyed the most?
Yes. Thank you for that question. Shows to direct, I have it in categories. Shows to direct, and one of these has been done 3 times, so that tells you that I really like it. And 2 of them have been done twice. I love Spoon River Anthology. That's one of my favorite shows. When I was in high school, I did a cutting from that at State Speech Contest, and I got a 1. We had to, in my junior English class, we had to write our own epitaphs. Do you all know Spoon River? It's a mythical town in Illinois, and everybody's dead, and now they talk from the grave. And you get the story of the town about how they really felt about each other now that they're dead. And everybody has, I mean, the characters are one monologue and you're done with them. But you hear about them throughout the evening. A lot of other characters come and go. My favorite show probably all the times. Then my next one is Midsummer Night's Dream. I love that show. I played Nick Bottom in college, my freshman year. And we've done it with community theater. And I think, Louie, you helped probably sew some of those costumes. And then we did the 8th century Japanese version of it when had a student here. And that was probably my most favorite show to watch. Just because of, she taught girls, well, she bound their busts every night. So they were flat, because they had to be flat-chested. And then taught them how to walk in shoes and carry their fans and use their fans, and taught the guys how to take the big steps and use their swords. And it was just a fun show to watch. And the set was elevated platforms that were painted in gloss and black with little red lanterns on the corners. And it was just a really beautiful show. Something we had never tried before. I was so happy that having a theater major from Japan and actually using that. And she still writes me periodically about that. So, and then my other favorite show is the night Thoreau spent in jail. That's one of my all-time favorites. I thought if I could have been taught Thoreau through that show in high school, I would have gotten a much better grade. It made so much more sense hearing them sit around and talk about what that all meant. So yeah, those are my favorite ones that I've directed.
And Chris was in the night Thoreau spent in jail.
Yes. The first time. And I've done it twice, but then Alex did it at the high school and took it to the State Theater Thespians Conference. They were selected, and his cast went into to the concert hall in Wichita and presented it. And that was fun to do that, and I got to do all the costumes. He said, the bad thing about it, Dad, is everything you did, the judge really, really liked. Everything that we did, yeah. He said he loved the set, he loved the costumes. They didn't know how you taught those kids to work in hoops. And I thought, yeah, okay, thanks, Alex. He was making me feel good. Yeah, Deb.
Two things.
Oh.
I think there was one play that Carlene did the whole thing by herself.
The Belle of Amherst, in the round, on stage in Brown Auditorium. And Jesse Miller, a senior, was doing a paper on Emily Dickinson, and Bruce Clary had just finished his dissertation on Emily Dickinson. And so all that kind of hit at the same time. And that show had been done 3 times. Carlene was the first one as part of the main season, but I had a student that I had at Buehler High School that came to Mac, and she did a cut version one year, and then she did the full thing a couple years later. So, yeah.
And then I know for a good many years you were the only person in the theater department.
Yes.
And I think sometimes you stayed up all night.
Nah.
How many years were you the only one?
21 years by myself, and then finally got a second one added in, and yeah, that was fun to get that second person. Took us a while to finally get the right person in, but yeah. So yeah. What else? Yeah.
This is kind of a historical question. I was in college from 1957 to 61.
Yes.
That's even before you were there.
Yes.
And I think probably you would agree that the times have changed a bit. When I was in college, there was a play presented, I can't remember the name of it, but one of the...
I have it right here.
Probably.
Keep going, I'm listening.
One of the concerns about the play was that the word, which is typically spelled D-A-M-N,
Yes.
was used on the stage.
No.
Yes. And not only that, some of the students used their own freedom and also got into the act.
Really?
And the director was furious about that. I think he thought he was going to lose his job. I guess the question really is about working with the college milieu and the cultural milieu. How has that worked out over the years? The topics you deal with and some of the plays that you dealt with would not have been on stage when I was in college.
No, they would not have been.
Maybe should have been, but they weren't.
This is my folder on letters to Rick Tyler about shows. And I must admit, I've had the best support from administration ever. Paul Hoffman was amazing at writing letters to people. And he never once talked to me about anything I selected until he left the office. Then he and I had a nice little conversation about that. But very, very supportive. And the same thing with every president that's been at McPherson College. And I've gone through a couple of them. But yeah, and the letters are positive, they're negative, and the one I got the most letters about was as is, but I got positive letters about it and negative letters about it. And so it was like, so what do you do? Yeah, some people loved it, some people hated it. Yeah, Ruth.
My husband, Bowden Howell, had a daughter that had to say that D-A-M-N word in the play.
Yeah.
He was very upset about it. For doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, over the years, my first year, I was a good boy, I got no letters. That was it. And at one point, someone said, aren't you upset you're getting letters? And I said, no, actually, I think we're changing McPherson College ever so slightly, but we're keeping up with the times that the kids live in. And if I didn't get letters, I'd probably be mad at myself. That to challenge people and to challenge the way people think and to not necessarily say it's good or bad, but I've always felt, and I've told kids, that if you're never challenged in your beliefs, how do you know you have them? And so that was part of why we did some of the shows we did. That there were a lot of shows that, why'd you bring that up? Deb, I think you had a question clear in the back.
Well, maybe you've already said this, but do you have any idea how many students have gone through the program under you?
No. But in my 12th year here, I did a faculty lecture during convocations when we had them twice a week and they had to fill all those slots. And at that point, we had done 135 sets, 1,447 costumes, 595 actors, technicians, directors, over 75 musicians. 436 of that group were students, 24 of them were faculty and staff, and 130 of them were community people. And that was in the first 12 years with 65 main stage productions. So, and 475 performances in that 12 years. But part of that was drama tour, where we went out on the road and we sometimes do 3 shows a day. And our audiences had ranged in that time period from 8 in the audience, in a small church up in northeastern Iowa, to one of the productions of Wizard of Oz one night where almost 1,000 people were in the auditorium. So, yeah. But that's before we had DVRs and computers, and people actually went out to get their entertainment, and we had Lions Club travelogues and all those kind of things in the auditorium. Yeah.
That's sort of my question. So I am totally a fan of live performance. Explain, wax philosophical a little bit. Why is live performance so important and so effective?
It's immediate. To me, it's that whole idea of, I go because I want to see him make mistakes. That theater it's immediate, but it's rehearsed. It's planned, but it's spontaneous. It's all those things that kind of fit into, and today, the thing I hate about it is that kids are so used to watching something on their computer or on TV in their room, and they can stop it and go back. And so they treat live theater the same way. They think they can stop it and go back, and so they talk and they do all kinds of things, and it really angers me. And that's probably why I'm getting out right now, because hearing kids talk and have their cell phones going, but they tell me, but Rick, I know exactly what's going on. I thought, and they probably could tell me everything that's going on, but yeah, the idea. But yeah, there's something, fun about live theater. However, this January I went to New York City to watch my good friend Bette Midler in Hello Dolly. And people were behind us, were talking and singing along with her. And I thought, come on, people, I didn't pay hundreds of dollars to hear you sing. Yeah, and so I think it's something that's kind of swept everywhere, that we've really got to be careful with that, but yeah. Yeah, Rebecca.
Do there seem to be openings for students that want to major in drama and go out and teach?
Teach, yes. Yeah. There are 3 of us retiring this year. Rick Tyler, Cindy Marion's finally retiring. Used to be here at the high school. And then my good friend Roger Moon that I replaced at Bueller High School, he's older than I am and he's finally retiring. So, but Addie Johnson just got a job at Nickerson High School. She was offered a job at 2 other places. So there are some theater jobs starting to open up again. So, yeah.
Well, Rick, this isn't a question, but it's a comment on how you affected my family's life, and I'll just cry. I had never been involved with theater at all, and then one time you opened up the Wizard of Oz to the community, and I went out to try out, but you had to fill out this little thing, and I did not realize all the stuff that was behind the scenes, because when I was reading that, I thought, oh wow, I know this, I don't know that. But I knew I could sew, and so I marked costumes, and boy, I didn't know what I was getting into. But in that particular show, I didn't get a part, but my children got to play parts, so that was their first exposure to anything like that. And I helped with all the costumes. In fact, I will never forget making Gerald's lion costume, and the Tin-Man suit for Bruce Klein, yeah. Anyway, just a lot of different things there. So that was our first involvement in anything like that, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. My grandson, one of my grandsons, who is now 13, still talks about me taking him to see the Giant Peach.
Oh, James and the Giant Peach.
James and the Giant Peach, yeah. And so you impacted our lives in that regard, and plus First Nighters, of course, I just absolutely adored. So
I just ran across your drawing of the Scarecrow for the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, did you?
I still have it, yeah. And I think you worked with Catherine Whitaker on that show in costumes.
I met Chris and Catherine at the college because of that. In fact, I have several kids that I met at my time doing that, and then also when I worked there for a little bit about 3 years in the food service, that I still keep in touch with.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Catherine, even though I didn't go to that college, it's very important to me.
Catherine was my first theater major. She came as a freshman when I came. And her senior project pretty well set the bar. Clear up here. We had never had a show ready to go on opening night during the dress rehearsal. And for Catherine, she directed it. She did the costumes. She conducted the orchestra, did the musical rehearsals. And the show, final dress rehearsal, everybody just put their stuff back in the costume dressing area, and we went home. It was done. And I thought, wow. I want to be just like her when I grow up. Yeah. And the other one that did that was Katie Sue Nichols. And she did a one-woman show, the Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe, Lily Tomlin's one-woman show. And it was, what, hour and 40 minutes, something like that. And there were more people, she was on stage, but she had the whole thing memorized, like that. That just amazes me, that people can do that. And her senior project almost didn't happen because we had gotten permission to do the show once we could put it on our poster, but we had to wait till we got permission from the law firm representing Lily Tomlin and so I wrote the letter. I did it the correct way that time. I wrote the letter, and we hadn't heard, and we hadn't heard, and we hadn't heard, and so Katie Sue and I decided we were going to go ahead and start rehearsals for it, and then my colleague at the time said, "You don't have permission yet, do you?" And I said, "No." She said, if you do it, I'll turn you in. A week later, I got a phone call from Lily Tomlin. And the letter had been, they had changed representation. And she said, we finally got it, and we hope you have time and that your actress has enough time to memorize all the words, and that by all means you may do the show, and there will be no charge. And I thought, yes, of course, I wasn't in my office, it was on my answering machine. And so I was getting ready to teach a Monday night class, and I ran to the cafeteria and got Katie Sue and said, here, listen to this. And she, remember that she said, Lily Tomlin called me an actress. And she had said in the note, she said, my representation will call you in a week with all the stuff so that you have record that it's okay to do and that no one can turn you in and that you've got permission to do this. And so she called back a week later, and I missed her the second time. So anyway, but yeah.
What is Katie Sue doing now?
Katie Sue is still managing a costume house in New York City and has opened her own glove factory and is making gloves. And she...
Not just any glove.
No, not just any. These are gloves that are shot, yeah, they're... Go ahead, you saw them.
I thought I might go buy a pair. Well, like the cheapest ones were $300 and some dollars. Like they're real leather and they're very...
A lot of them are ornamented in such a way that they're for special things. She did a lot with, her big thing is building pieces, not just flat patterns and that kind of stuff, three-dimensional pieces. And when we did Winnie the Pooh when she was here, she did the costumes, so that was the first time she'd ever done costumes. And she developed all these pieces for the animals where she put foam rubber insets into their legs and hips and arms and things to make them look bigger and animal-wise. And I thought, how do you do that? She said, well, you just kind of figure it out in your head. And I said, kind of like if you know the waist and you know the length, you can make a skirt. I like it. I like it. So yeah. So yeah, she's doing that and having a good time.
Well, I have one more thing to add to that, because I wanted to applaud you for being brave enough to do some of those plays that were questionable. I will never forget the one that
Frozen.
JD was.
I just read your letter the other day.
Oh, did you? Yes, that was just so amazing, and it was so powerful.
Frozen. It was a senior project for Keisha Kaufman, and JD played a serial pedophile. And we brought in a woman that he had gone to grad school with from Philadelphia, and she was the attorney. And Keisha played the mother, and he had raped and killed this little girl. And so it was the three of them. Oh, no. Yeah. So, yeah. Got letters on that one, too. But mostly good. Mostly good. A few bad ones. Yeah.
Can you share what it costs to put on a production? I'm curious. I don't have any idea. Is it sky's the limit, or?
You can spend as much money as you got, and then more sometimes. That when I first started, the scripts were like $1.25, and royalties were $35 a night, and you could buy fabric for $1 a yard or $2 a yard. I remember when I bought my first piece of fabric that was over $10 a yard. It was for a costume for Shannon Kirshner in Hay Fever. And I thought, oh, $10 a yard. I had to be very careful how I cut it, and I cut it wrong once. And it bothered me. But yeah, but we figured it up that today scripts are $7 to $10 a piece. And so depending on how big your cast is, and you always buy more than that because the director needs one, the designers need one, the lighting people need them. And so you can spend $150, $200 just on scripts and you have nothing to show for it yet. And then by the time you pay royalties, and those are now anywhere from $50 to $100 for a straight play. Musicals depends on how much you're charging at the door, how many nights you're going to do it, whether you're going to do full orchestration or reduced orchestration. And so, yeah, big musicals, When we did The King and I, it was probably $1,200 or more by the time we bought all the fabric and painted the sets and paid the royalties and all that kind of stuff, yeah. And so that's why First Nighters was a great help, because I couldn't do that on my $900. Of course, that $900 now, the college, I have a very healthy budget that the college provides, and I don't have to live off box office. And most places in Kansas, they have to live off their box office. So, you want to come in? Yeah, bring your friends. I don't care. Don't have to pay. Just come on in. Yeah. Fill the seats. But yeah, we've been very, very lucky over the years. But yeah, it's, yeah.
Rick, I wish I would have, or I wish I could have.
I wish I would have kept my mouth shut more often. I got myself in an awful lot of trouble just by being the really obnoxious young professor. And I'm still doing it. So you think I would have learned after? Yeah. Could have. I don't know.
I hope theater department's going to go on somewhat like it has.
Yes? You saw the announcement? Who they've hired to replace me? Oh, Miss Jen Taylor Pollard. Yeah. So yeah. And First Nighters will continue. They've told me that it will continue. So yeah, we'll see what happens. It won't be the same, and I wouldn't expect it to be the same. Jen isn't Rick, and yeah, and so she's got other skills I don't have. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Will you be able to stay away?
Yes.
What are you going to do? What's your plan?
My plan is to have a tattoo on my hand that says no. It may just be an ink or pencil or something, or a magic marker but yeah. I have a flower garden that's been neglected since I put it in, and I want to spend time doing that. But yeah, don't know. We're going to see what happens. I'm going to have an automatic thing on my phone when it gets close to any show. Rick Tyler is out of the office now for the next 20 days. Please contact it later. No, I have been cleaning. I have cleaned out, I think, almost every cubby hole in Brown Auditorium and Hess. And we had a huge garage sale last weekend, and everything is labeled. Everything is in all the costumes are in Roy G. Biv order again. You all know that, right? That's how we organize our costumes, is in red, orange, and color, so that we can find color and those kind of things. And so if JD and Jen can't find something, it's because they haven't opened their eyes and looked. That's all I'm saying. Because when I walked in, yeah, it was a mess. And there have been years that I've left in the spring and come back in the fall, and somebody left it in a mess when they left in the spring. But no, so I'm trying to leave it in a much better shape, and so that everything is organized, and that all the lighting equipment is in one place, and all the chandeliers are in one place, and all the rope is in one place, and the costumes are organized by time period and color, and men's and women's and that kind of stuff. And so we've gone through everything, thrown a bunch of stuff away that I had costumes that Larry Kitzel took to the Renaissance Festival when I was a student. I finally gave those away. You might find them down at the Opera House, yeah. Go.
Favorite set design and costume design?
Favorite set design. Oh, I wrote it down. I knew someone was going to ask that. Favorite set design, Brighton Beach Memoirs, where we put the entire house on stage. Arsenic and Old Lace, the second time we did it, where they went charging up San Juan Hill, and the window seat, and I won't tell you what happened to when people opened the window seat. There's things you don't want to know. Costumes, The Last of Mrs. Lincoln was one of my favorite shows to design, and The King and I, by far. Favorite set of costumes. I've got more costumes. There are certain costumes dress that Shannon Kirshner wore in Gaslight. Someone was looking at it and said, "Who put all those tiny little pleats into the hem of that costume?" And I said, "I did." "Why?" "Because I could." Yeah. And I remember making Carlene's dress for the Belle of Amherst and thought, a lot of the dresses in that time period have all these little pleats that go horizontal. And so when I made the dress for when she did the Belle of Amherst, we put all those little horizontal pleats in a gauze fabric. Then we had to make full, complete period underwear for her to wear underneath this sheer gauze fabric. But it was fun to do those kind of things, those details. I loved it.
Well, I think one thing that you do that I don't think people realize, at least I think that's what you were doing when I was down there a time or two, when you just had a piece of material and some scissors, and you looked at the picture of the person who was going to do the role and just started cutting. And for me, that's unbelievable. And I just think you need to give yourself a little more credit about the ability to do that without a pattern, without a drawing. You start cutting. No wonder you made a mistake once in a while.
Yeah. That's always been my therapy. People say, what do you do when you get really angry and you can't? I said, I go to the costume shop. I either sew or I cut out costumes because I don't have to have anybody help me. It's something I can do by myself. Whereas the rehearsals and building set and those kind of things, usually you have to have people around. Unless you're doing it yourself.
Probably some people don't realize there used to be a little theater in the basement of Brown Auditorium.
Yeah, where the old band room was when Brown was first built. And we'd go down there and, yeah. Some of the shows. I was going through a bunch of old pictures the other day and I thought, wow, some of the sets we did down there actually look pretty nice. I thought that was in the basement of Brown Auditorium. Yeah. So yeah, it's been.
I want you to know that the cabinets you built are still in the apartment above
For
the
Night Mother?
garage at 501.
Yeah. We were doing the play Night Mother and it was a complete kitchen. And we had a rental above our garage that needed a new kitchen. And Eric Johnson said, I can build cabinets. So Eric built kitchen cabinets. But I remember when people started coming into First Nighters, they had left all the drop cloths out in the lobby. And as people were coming in, I quickly ran upstairs and just folded all the drop cloths and put them on the other side of the back of the auditorium. They were coming in on the south side, and so on the north side of the auditorium, I just shoved all those drop cloths because they had stained them and built them out in the lobby. That's back in the day when it was still a tile floor before the carpet went in. So, yeah.
One thing that doesn't happen with plays anymore is the curtains don't go open and shut, open and shut. You wait. And you just change your sets in the dark. What other changes have happened that are really helpful in producing a play these days?
You used to always hide every lighting instrument. You never want anybody to see where the lights were. And anymore, it's like, you go to New York, they'll hang a lighting instrument wherever they need to hang one. And I thought, why am I taking so much time making sure I've got curtains covering everything up? Yeah, so let the lighting instrument show. And I think once we got into Mingenbach and there were no curtains, the lights just were there wherever they're at. Helped a lot, but that's probably the big thing as far as trying to mask a set and hide things. So yeah.
How did you make the plant for Little Shop of Horrors?
That was Shane Kirshner. We turned the band room at that time into, the little theater was the plant building room. And it was, I have a picture of all the green pieces that were on the floor when they finished. Yeah. So yeah, it was fun. Yeah. Probably some of my favorite shows to watch. Well, there are two. The Midsummer Night's Dream Japanese one. My other one was Music Man, when Patty Lusk-Gross and Glenn Snell played the two leads in that. And I know at the end of I Was Stubborn, and I had done all the colors by family, and the older people were, the less cream was in their costumes, and the little kids were mostly all cream costumes and all done by family colors and whatever. And at the end of I Was Stubborn, they're all standing there, and they all end up in their family groups around the stage in front of all these beautiful backdrops and architectural pieces. And I thought, okay, if they get it, we're going to get applause. We got the applause. And when I use a curtain every once in a while now, it's because I want the set to get the as the curtain opens, as opposed to watching them come in. Oh, there's a set up there, da-da-da-da-da. And so every once in a while, I'll use a curtain just so I can, it's the Rick Tyler thing. I still have to say, do we still have it? Open. And I had that moment again in The King and I when Anna and the King were dancing, and we'd done that gorgeous lavender dress, and it went out over the orchestra pit, and people thought she was going to fall in. But there was that big of a train on the back of it that it just went whoosh over the, and I think we probably lost some music off some stands or something, I don't know. Yeah, it went dark for a moment, so yeah. So there are moments like that that I always remember. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I knew your dad was with him in Africa, played his last game of golf with him. What did he think of your career?
Well, I remember when I was in college, theater is a major? I mean, my dad taught business. And it was interesting that when all four of us graduated, we were within 3.5 years of each other, the four of us kids. Guess who was the only one using the major they got in college? My sister was a nurse, and she wasn't nursing at the time because she was having kids. And so she later went back into nursing. But at that time, I was the only one using my degree that I got in college. He came and watched me teach down at Bueller. He and Mom were down for something during, and I was real nervous. I thought, having your father as your supervising teacher? Yeah. It's okay, Dad, what do you think? He said, get rid of the red ink pen. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, you don't need to prove anything by carrying that red ink pen around like you're going to mark their grades or do something nasty to them with a red ink pen. He said, you don't need that, put it down, get rid of it. To this day, I've never had a red ink pen. So yeah. Yeah, he really enjoyed coming to the theater. He was in bad health when we did the 30-year retrospect. And so we brought him in before it opened to everybody else, so he could walk and go down and look at everything. So yeah, he was fun to have around. Yeah, Colleen.
Besides all the costumes that you've done for shows, I'm wondering how many wedding dresses or special occasion dresses or suits or tuxes that you've constructed in your career as well.
I think there are 7 wedding dresses that I've done for students. The first one was for a woman, and she was in my public speaking class, and my grandma was going to buy me some really nice fabric for a wedding dress, but who do I get to make it? And I can make that. It's the pattern. It was this lovely pink silk fabric. It was beautiful. The wedding was out in the park behind the courthouse. And that was the start. She said, this is kind of what I want, but if you could do this, and I think I saw the picture of the things that we circled, and move that over here and take that over there and put it there. And then I did Ann Kirshner's wedding dress, and did all 3 of the bridesmaids, and then Emily and Carlene had matching dresses as candlelighters, and they all had this cutout in the back that went, because that's what Ann wanted. And so it was on hers, and those finally disappeared, Carlene. Sorry, your dress is gone. They were in the costume shop for a long time. I think the Opera House has them now. But that was doing that wedding was the time I got the most sick in my life. And a week or so after that, we were doing Nonsense. And a woman from Newton was choreographing it for me. And 3 days before we opened, I was sick in her dog. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. I called up Annette and I said, can you take rehearsals? I don't think I'm going to make it. I could be dead here soon. And I went to bed and stayed there. And then closing night, I got a big blanket and I sat in the back of the balcony. And the show was done on stage with the audience on stage. And I watched the show from back of the balcony and thought, okay.
I had to paint the floor.
Yeah.
That was the best show. You and Susan needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a couple of fun things. I missed strike twice over the 41 years. The first time we had done the musical, or the play Under Milkwood, Lisa Earle from Warrensburg, Missouri had directed it. And we were striking the set. And the counterweights would go up through holes in the old light booth, and some stage weights were in the way. And as the arbor was going up, the stage weights came down and hit me on the head. I didn't have to stay for strike. I got to go to the ER. And the other one I missed was the last show for another Antigone. I didn't go to strike. And I should have, because they filled the shop vac with dirt. All that dirt, they sucked it all up and then just left in the... So anyway, but yeah. But then my class had to take it down later anyway, so I got to strike part of it anyway. So.
Any other injuries?
Yes, I swallowed a pin. I was making costumes for the Madrigal Feast. Allison Holman had just finished. I said, okay, Allison, pin this, and pin this. And I said, you can go get dressed now, take the costume off and bring it back. And I went, I always keep pins in my mouth. And I went, okay, there's a pin here. And I did all the things you're not supposed to do. I tried to make myself throw it up. I tried to stick something. I didn't know where it was at. And finally, they took me to the ER and did x-rays. And I have the pictures. Heidi took pictures of them for me. It was right by my vocal cord. So they took me in, and Dr. Gaddard was the lucky man that got to deal with me and got Tyler Hughes's little pincher thing for surgery, stuck it in my nose and down my throat, and they had a camera on it so they could see it, and luckily it was one of those big-headed pins, and then they pulled it back out. So for my birthday that year, Heidi Cheney gave me a whole set of retractable dress pins. And she put long surgical thread on every one of them. So if I did it again, we could just pull them back out.
Any injuries on actors or students or?
We have some students that continue like to fall off of things. One thing I'd always told kids in the shop, I said, never wear open-toed shoes. And Gail was a part of this one. We were sewing, and some kid came down and had stubbed their toe on a platform, and their big toenail was all the way back the other way. I know, same experience. I don't do blood. When our kids were growing up, Carlene did blood, I did vomit. I don't do blood. Emily had little things on her face as a baby, and they had to take in and pull them all off, and I about lost me and yeah, not good. But yeah, kids are constantly doing weird things.
Break a leg during performance.
Oh, in the first show. Yeah, in my very first show, the first performance of Comedy of Errors, Sarah, what's her name? Was dancing across, first entrance onto stage, broke her ankle. First show ever, yeah.
Well, in just a moment, I'm going to give Rick time to do some final words. Any last thoughts? But just two things before we go. We will have an opportunity all together to celebrate Rick Tyler and 100 years of theater at McPherson College at Homecoming this fall on Saturday, October 20th from 5:30 to 7:30 at the Schneider's house. So that'll be a time where we can all get together and celebrate and maybe ask the questions you didn't get to today of Rick Tyler. And the other is just to note, I should have done this in announcements, starting this fall, these sessions will move to 3 p.m. instead of 2. If you show up at 2, you can wait for us and still enjoy it, but we will start these sessions at 3 in the fall. And so I'll let Rick offer any last thoughts before we say thank you.
It's been a wild ride and a lot of fun, and would change very little. So thank you. It's been great.